All right, with that, we will get started. For those of you who may not be familiar, the NPDA supports franchise and independent power sports dealers through education, advocacy, programs, and practical resources, all focused on helping dealers build a stronger, more professional, and more profitable industry. This partner webinar series gives dealers direct access to the companies, tools, and people helping shape the power sports retail landscape with one goal in mind, keeping dealers informed and exposed to ideas they can actually put to work. Today's webinar focuses on two problems that are quietly holding back power sports growth. The first is that dealers are losing opportunities they already earned. A customer raises their hand, fills out a lead form, asks a question, or starts shopping after hours, and too often the response is late, incomplete, or never happens at all. That is not just a process problem, it is a sales problem, a customer experience problem, and ultimately a profitability problem. The second issue is even bigger. The power sports buyer is changing. Younger customers expect to research, compare, finance, and purchase with a level of convenience they already experienced in almost every other category. When that option is not available, many of them do not walk into the dealership to finish the process. They simply move on, delay the purchase, or never enter the industry at all. That is why today's conversation matters. This is not about replacing the dealer. It's about strengthening the dealer's ability to compete in a market where speed, convenience, transparency, and follow-up matter more than ever. Dealers still matter. The local relationship still matters. The showroom still matters. But the path to the showroom has changed. And the dealers who adapt to that path are going to have a better chance of capturing the customer before someone else does. We are joined today by Rowan Mockler. Did I get that correct?
Nailed it.
Yeah, so I think out of 13 webinars, it's probably the second time I've got somebody's name right, and the only other one was Ted. So Rowan is co-founder and CEO of Echo, and Spring is going to participate in today's presentation. Rowan and his team are working directly in the space where online vehicle retail, AI-powered lead response, digital checkout, compliance, and dealership operations all come together. Their work gives them a unique view into how customers are shopping today, where dealers are losing opportunities, and what practical tools are emerging to help close that gap. Today, we'll take a dealer-focused look at what is actually changing, what dealers should be paying attention to, and how technology can solve real operational problems without losing sight of the human side of the business. If you have any questions, there's a Q&A button down in your taskbar. Just go ahead and click on that and ask questions at any point in time. We'll work through them as we go, or I'll save them for the end. This webinar is also being recorded, and the recording and presentation will be made available afterward. With that, I'll turn it over to Ron.
Great. Thanks for having me again, Mark, and thank you to everyone who's joined. I know you all are probably very busy people taking time out of your day to do this, so much appreciated. And yeah, Mark, to just a bigger thanks to the broader NPDA for all that you folks do, as well as holding these webinars and allowing folks like Echo and myself to come and attend. So yeah, really excited to dive straight in. Mark did a great job of, I think, just summarizing the two core pain points I'll be covering and how we've built some of our tooling in service of solving those problems. And yeah, like Mark said as well, would love for this to be very collaborative. As soon as questions come up, as I'm sure several will, please just ping me and I'll field those as we go. So with that, let me pull up our presentation. Cool. And Mark, confirming you can see that on your end?
Looks good.
Great. All right, so I'll start from the top. To give everyone a bit of context on Echo, I've got a slide coming up that does a comprehensive job of that. But on a high level, the way we describe our business is the vehicle commerce platform that closes deals 24/7. And I think it's really important to dig into like why we lead with that line, because a lot of what we do is a mixture of lead nurturing, lead capture tech, but also using the legacy term digital retailing. And the problem with using the term digital retailing is I think it comes with a bit of a sour taste in the mouth because coming out of COVID, when a lot of these tools started landing in dealer stacks for the first time, I think there were a lot of empty promises of what digital retailing would be, in that for the most part, if you look at what is out there on the digital retailing front, I would argue it's for the most part a glorified lead generator, where maybe it's doing a pre-qualification, maybe it's getting credit applications syndicated out to your lender waterfall, but it stops at the handoff, right? Like the tech doesn't necessarily help you close the deal, go end to end. Whereas a lot of what Echo's done and spent a lot of time building with a world-class team is getting into the minutia and doing a lot of the steps that are more cumbersome that come after the handoff, trying to automate a lot of the, again, more cumbersome, more parts of the process that are in the minutia. So that's why we describe ourselves that way. Here are the two topics we'll be covering. One is our AI sales agent, which is our newest product that has been making waves in the powersports world in particular. It is an omni-channel AI agent that knows your dealership, your brand, your inventory, and your playbooks cold, and it helps you capture leads when the store is closed. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about our transaction engine, which is really the core of our platform. That's the thing that we went to market with for the first time in 2024. And that's the part of the platform that takes a deal end to end through financing, titling, registration, insurance verification, signature collection, the whole nine yards. One thing I'll call out here, just because we're very proud of it, is that we were nominated to and listed on the 2026 Powersports Business Nifty 50 list as the number one ranked dealer technology platform on the variable upside of things. So very proud of that. And we know that's a list that folks often reference when deciding who to partner up with on the vendor side of things. Great. So a little bit about me. Mark gave a bit of an intro, but I'll elaborate. So if you were here for the first few minutes when Mark was asking me about my experience with karaoke, you would have learned that I'm from South Africa. I was born and raised in Johannesburg. I ended up coming across to the US because I wanted to be in Silicon Valley. I wanted to learn how to build things and ultimately start a technology company in something I was passionate about. So I ended up doing computer science at Stanford, and that's actually where I met my co-founder, Chris, who isn't here today, but if we do work with you already or you're interested in working with us, you'd go on to meet him. But he's from Atlanta. A bit of background further on me. So back in South Africa, my dad part-owned a used car dealership when I was growing up. So he's a big motorsports fan generally. He's actually the chairman of the Nissan GTR club in South Africa. And so I grew up going to track days with him. I did a lot of competitive go-karting growing up. And I think that's where a lot of the roots here stem from. And ultimately, Chris and I put our heads together in college. We built a bunch of silly things while studying computer science. Left college, got a bit of experience at some fast-growing technology companies, and then decided to build Echo. And the impetus for it was just this general feeling that dealerships deserve better tools and not more tools. We also think that the consumer experience in broader motor vehicle retail is somewhat broken. You've got this reality where on one side of things, there are stats that suggest most US consumers would rather get a root canal than negotiate with a salesperson at a dealership. But then, on the flip side, when you look at the dealership back office, processing a vehicle transaction is also fundamentally just one of the most complicated transactions there is. It's very regulated. We've got financing, titling, registration, all these complicated things. And so we set out on this mission of wanting to build a platform that, in a similar way to what Stripe has done for online transactions generally, what Carvana has done for used vehicle sales, we wanted to give every dealer a Carvana-like purchase experience that handled and automated and abstracted away a lot of the complexity of a vehicle sale. And as an emergent outcome of that, we also wanted to improve the buyer experience, make it possible to transact from anywhere. And in so doing, usher in this kind of new generation of folks that, to Mark's point earlier, have grown up getting used to ordering things on Amazon, having them pitch up on their driveway 2 days later, etc. So that's a bit of background on me, a bit of background on kind of the founding story of Echo, and I'll keep going. So some of the core topics, just to lay it all out, we kind of covered a bit about Echo. I'll go through some of our track record, just so you all have that context going in. And then we will cover those two problems that Mark mentioned. One is that there is this fundamental problem in power sports that the leads you are already paying for are leaking, and we'll give you some interesting stats there to ground that, as well as show you the tool we've built. And then the second problem is this notion of a bit of an existential threat in power sports, where the buyer base is statistically speaking starting to age out, and we all need to do things to find ways to get younger riders interested, or prospective riders interested in buying and being part of the community. And a very special kind of exclusive thing we'll be doing for this NPDA webinar is giving you all some heads up into the roadmap, what is coming on both of these products. Mark, also keep me honest here on timing. I'll try and keep this presentation down to 25, 30 minutes.
You got 4 minutes left.
Okay, cool. Well, to wrap it up, folks. All right, so let's dive in. We kind of covered Echo's origin story, so I'll skip over that one, but give you a quick platform overview. So there are really 4 parts to Echo's platform, and I'll start in the top left. So we've got the AI sales agent, high-level, omni-channel AI that is trained on your dealership, your inventory, your playbooks. It's got a personality that you configure yourself. It's got a knowledge hub, a brain with documents and photos and data sources that you get to configure yourselves. And it lives on your website by default, and it also lives on text. So it's hooked up to a number that either you already have or a net new one. And essentially, a prospective buyer, a lead, can engage with this agent and get just about any question they have about your inventory, about your store, about your operations answered. And that agent, depending on how you've configured it, will go on to try and get an appointment scheduled, a pre-qualification run, a trade estimate done, whatever tools you want to configure, we can support. And to the extent that same buyer or lead is interested in transitioning to text, that same conversation, all that context, that same agent can then continue the conversation over text message. We've then got the transaction engine. This is the Carvana-like purchase experience in a box, but for everyone else. We bolt this onto your pre-existing website, and it can take a buyer from soup to nuts, from A to Z, plates in the mail, pick up the keys a couple of days later type thing. So we'll cover that. And then these are more ancillary things, but we do have this notion of an admin portal. This is our back-end tool that dealers interface with, where you're going to get context on leads coming in, deals processing, conversations that the AI agent is having, and all of your settings. We know you use a lot of existing tools today, so we've got a lot of bidirectional integrations with the likes of a Lightspeed, or with different CRMs you might be using. And so we've made this in such a way that it is interoperable with your other tools. And then just an exciting kind of heads up, we are starting to roll out what we're calling our AI native dealer website. So we've just been hearing from a lot of folks in the space that there's a lot of pain around the current selection of website technology, and folks waiting 2 weeks for a support ticket to be resolved when they want to change the color on the background of their website, whatever it might be. We really want to disrupt that, so we're starting to roll this website product out to used-only dealers to start, and making our way to franchise as well. But just a heads up on that, we'll keep you updated on timing there. Great. So bit of credibility building, I think, is necessary. It's always scary, I know, for dealers to take a bet on a startup where you don't know if they're going to be around in a year's time, or are they bluffing on like the extent of their technology. And what I'm trying to do here is just establish to you that this is legit. We know what we're doing, and we feel confident we're the best at what we do. So starting from the top, we have processed tens of thousands of orders across all 50 states since 2024. So that's predominantly on the transaction engine side of things, which is the product we went to market with. We are working with a growing list of the largest dealers and groups in the US on the Powersports side. We're actually starting to do so in auto as well. We also work directly with manufacturers and their dealer networks. And these range from newer entrants that have raised hundreds of millions, and more established OEMs with 200 plus dealers. And those programs are predominantly designed for dealers in the network to receive ways to hook up to Echo's tech that's integrated into the OEM site. We're also well capitalized, so we've raised $17.3 million from the likes of JP Morgan, Winnebago, Y Combinator, the Tesla Alumni Fund. So these are former Tesla executives that helped set up their very slick online checkout process, who have helped advise Echo on, how to structure that, how to build it out. We are now a team of roughly 35 in New York, and just a world-class team. Folks heralding from Apple, Polymarket. We just hired a general counsel that actually spent several years at Carvana previously. So really stacked team, and very proud of the folks we have working alongside us on this mission. And then always looking to keep industry best practices and priorities top of mind. We are voting members of the Motorcycle Industry Council. We are partners to the NPDA. Thank you, Mark, for letting us in there. And so too with the Low Speed Vehicle Dealer Association. So yeah, that's a bit of an overview. I will get moving a bit quicker in light of time. So let's get into the AI sales agent. The problem here is, leads are leaking that you're already paying for, and we think we can fix it. So here are some interesting stats on this problem. A lot of this data comes from Pied Piper and similar sources cited below. I'll start from the top. So 30% of leads that make their way to Powersports dealers are entirely ghosted today, which is interesting. And that was from the 2024 study. In the 2026 study, 53% of all inbound leads did not receive a response within 24 hours. And these last two are perhaps the most interesting. 60% of in-market buyers and leads are browsing after 5 p.m. when the doors of the typical dealership are closed. Mark, go ahead.
I was just going to point out that in my 10 years of facilitating 20 groups, one of the things that I started doing early days was shopping dealers. That was, 11 years ago. And over the last decade, I've probably shopped close to 500 dealers at this point in time. I would tell you that 30% ghosted rate was pretty close to that level 10 years ago. And today it's still at that rate. Really,
Wow.
one of the reasons that I gave up even trying to train dealers on digital lead responses is because I just found that in the 20 group setting, it was something that dealers love to talk about. They got all fired up about it. And then they went home and nothing ever changed. In fact, the last big meeting I had with a 20 group where we really focused on digital leads and, on a scale of 1 to 10, the group had averaged at a 2.2 on our ranking system for that. And everyone said, committed, we're going to go back and fix it. And then we came to the next 20 group meeting and they were all worse. And I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. I threw away all the work that I'd done on that over 10 years and just said, I'm done with it. I'm going to focus on something else.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, thanks for sharing that. And no, certainly from our own experience, not just the actual ground truth data here, we hear the same thing. And I think there's lots of reasons for it, right? It's if you're seeing a high volume of leads, right? Like a BDC team, if you have one, is easily inundated. It's hard to track these things down. I think you speak to folks that sit in the BDC seat and are handling these, and a lot of the time they're trying to eyeball and qualify leads as they come in, and perhaps are making the decision not to follow up when they themselves feel like it's not worth the time. And I think all of this suggests there is a huge incremental opportunity that is like so ripe for AI, I think, to help dealers sell more and do a better job of responding. So when it comes to like where to inject AI into the dealership, I would say like this is the most obvious opportunity for most. Because I would argue like we're not in the business, and I don't think it's very easy for companies that try to make the pitch of like, hey, um, this is an efficiency play that is targeting a part of the dealership that isn't already inundated, because then you're implying like, oh, we're looking to, repurpose staff for different things, which I think can get scary for for more family run operations, etc., and is not really in the spirit of like the typical dealership experience. Whereas this problem is truly like, hey, there is incremental overload that just isn't being tended to, and AI can help you get that incremental value, and you can continue to operate the dealership in the same way. So anyway, we'll get into that in a bit. I think the last stat I want to mention here to everyone is you take the 60% of most leads browsing when the doors of the dealership are closed and no one's there to answer, and you couple it with the fact that 78% of people who go on to buy are going to buy from the first dealer that responds to them. And clearly, the magic recipe here is really you need to be the one to respond first, 24/7, 24/7 at all times, and that will just like very immediately lead to better results at the dealership. And so it was with that in mind when we were studying this data that we decided to build our AI sales agent. So there's a couple of screenshots here, but I'm actually keen to spend maybe 5 minutes in our demo environment and Mark, have you try and break the thing. But essentially what you're looking at is how it appears on dealer sites. So essentially this AI agent is omni-channel. It's hooked up to SMS. It also has a chat widget. And it's trained on your store. So it sits on your website, very elegant widget that can do just about everything all your other widgets do, right? So you can engage with it on the site, ask it any question. It's going to answer in the context of where you are on the site. It knows your inventory. It can list those listings. It can take you to the VDPs. And it also gives you visibility into its train of thoughts. So you can see when it's querying inventory, you can see when it's dipping into Knowledge Hub documents, etc. And then at any point, if I wanted to transition over to text, because obviously I'm not going to be on the website all the time, maybe I'm on my way to work or on my way back, you can then move into text. And so that same conversation here, you can see is now just continuing with continuity over what was discussed on the site. Now, as this is happening, all of this information is being captured and codified into a lead object that's going straight into your CRM. And as the agent learns more about the buyer, whether it's budget or the types of bikes they're looking at, whether they've got a trade, all of that is being injected into that lead, so that by the time an appointment in the best case is scheduled through the agent, your sales reps are sitting down the next morning at 9 a.m. and they've got warm leads that are already qualified, and those conversations turn into sales way quicker. So that's just a quick overview. I think helpful to talk about some core functionality because this as a use case of AI in dealerships is like a fairly obvious one, and I think I would be surprised to hear if you haven't heard from other companies trying to sell you a similar tool. This is where we've gone really deep. So one thing is it's got perfect inventory knowledge. So it's staying up to date based on what's on your website at all times from an inventory perspective. That can also be enriched by XML feeds and or a DMS connection. And so it knows once you've sold something and it's no longer available, vice versa. It's able to book appointments on the calendars you use today. So it looks at availability. It knows which person in the dealership should be on that invite. It's got CRM integration. So we are putting these leads as they are captured into a pre-existing CRM. If you have one, we have our own within your admin portal that where it lands by default. And then we are increasingly adding CRMs where that bi-directional functionality is available. So we can actually pull leads from your existing system into the sales agent to outbound to them if they've gone cold. And then we've got really deep on allowing the sales agent to use a lot of the integrations we built out for the transaction engine. So this agent can pre-qualify leads. It can provide a trade-in estimate, things that I would say just like a typical like follow-up bot doesn't necessarily do. Very quick to set up. We've gotten very good at that. And then to the extent you turn on our transaction engine and you're doing online sales, you are able to allow the agent to funnel leads into that process if they are ready to do so. But obviously contingent on how you want to set it up. And then we've got really sophisticated with how to involve your actual human reps in the dealership. So you can add reps to the admin portal. You can specify that they are going to participate in a round robin of sorts, and every lead that gets ingested by the sales agent through conversation is co-assigned to a human rep on your team. And the benefit of that is A, visibility, so someone can follow along that conversation, but also B, in the event that a lead says, "Oh, I would love to see a video of the unit, like a walk around of sorts." The agent's not going to be able to do that, of course. So what it'll do is it'll create an action item and it will ping the co-assigned rep to come in, send that video, and then once it's done, you can continue the sales agent's conversation. So it's really this kind of human in the loop, just giving everyone in the dealership more leverage. Very configurable. So you get to set up the personality of the agent. You get to give it a name. You can turn on and off the different capabilities. You can specify the goal. And then a knowledge hub. So the knowledge hub is outside of our default settings that you can tweak. If you've got information that you want the agent to be aware of, let's say OEM spec sheets or a playbook for how to handle someone who's got a trade, whatever that might be, you can upload these as markdown files, spreadsheets, and a Word doc, whatever that might be. And that agent is ingesting that information. So it's a bit like in ChatGPT, if you will use it in such a way that you upload documents so that it has context of that. That's exactly what's happening with the agent. Great. So I'd love to actually show everyone what this looks like. So here we are. We're actually on part of Echo's powered dealer website, a demo environment. And I think let's make our way into a VDP here so we can get a sense for how this works. So here we've got the agent at the bottom, and I had a bit of a head start. I said, "Tell me about this unit." So the agent already knows where on the site I am, and it's mentioning, "Cool, we're looking at this new 2026 Aprilia," and so on. So with that, Mark, I'd love for you or anyone else on the webinar to actually give this a shot. Like, what do we want to chat to the agent about?
Can you maybe ask it to compare this bike against a competing brand that this dealer doesn't carry? I'm always interested to see it's where I broke some other ones, where it starts recommending something else that a dealer doesn't carry.
Good question. So let's just
You're
cross-reference
you're
real
on a
quick.
210, you could look at like a Kawasaki Z series would
Yeah, I
be
just
kind of a
want to make sure I think we're carrying Kawasaki's in this store. It's got a lot of dummy inventory, but maybe I mean we could try it. Why not?
yeah, I guess ask for like the against the Z 1100. At least we can kind of see what the response looks like. As everybody can tell, we didn't plan for this.
Yeah. No, I'm putting you on the spot.
That's right.
Um, cool. Yeah, so one of the baked in skills, well, before I'd say that, so great. It's taking a look at inventory. We can actually quickly study what did it do here. So yeah, search the inventory. And yeah, it's essentially saying, great, high performance, modern, hyper naked bike. By comparison, the Z1100 is a classic air cooled four-cylinder standard motorcycle, etc. What kind of riding experience are you looking to get out of your next bike? And so the thing it's done preemptively, it's actually showing you some of the Kawasaki inventory we already have in the event that, that's what you're
That
interested in. Go ahead,
maybe
Mark.
maybe ask the question, I'm looking for something that's going to impress my riding buddies.
Okay.
Not many people can type on the spot, so I'm giving you kudos there,
Yeah.
Rowan.
Oh, good. I'm a finger typer to be frank, so I'm impressed I did that myself. All right, so formal recommendation: the Aprilia is definitely a head turn on any group ride with its aggressive Italian styling, etc. Um, Widely considered one of the best performing naked bikes on the planet. Um, yeah, and so what we've done by default here, Mark and everyone else, is the agents always by default configured to try and always continue the conversation, make sure that like we are making our way towards like some kind of qualification information whilst balancing like helpful information to the lead, as well as trying to make our way to the goal of, in this case, trying to book an appointment. So with that, Mark, what comes next in your mind?
Actually, I had a question for Mike. He asked, pricing, are you pulling that from the website, from Lightspeed, pushing and pulling data?
Brilliant question. So by default, we'll pull from the website. But the great thing about the ecosystem is we actually have what we call data field provenance. And basically what that means is every dealer within your configuration in Echo can specify, okay, for this type of data, like advertised price, pull from the website. But for, let's say, other types of data, pull from my DMS. And then for images, take from the website. So you can configure that how you wish, but by default, it's going to be website.
If anybody else has any questions, just drop them in the Q&A. So just look for that button down in the taskbar.
Cool.
So I think probably one more question before we move on. So at this point in time, can you say something like, if I want to order a new one of these, how long would it take to get it?
Yeah. Let's see.
It's pretty good
So
for two fingers.
yeah. Let's see. This will depend on what context the agent's got, but it will say instead of ordering and waiting, we actually have a few brand new Aprilias in
Oh,
stock right now.
that's
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
that's
that's
great.
nice.
I'm glad I did that. Yeah, so to your point, default playbook for the agent is like aligned with the default, intentions of a high proficiency operating dealership. So it's trying to get butts on seats ASAP. But of course, you can change this however you wish in the settings.
I could ask you 100 questions right here, but just one that I'm interested on because I've brought this up in almost every demo that I've done in AI in the industry at this point in time, and got to say that with one exception, nobody's really been able to what I consider to pass the test. But I want to I want to have somewhere in the back end, I want to quickly be able to scroll down all the questions that customers asked and
Mm,
look at quickly what the responses were and just be able to quickly grade those. I mean, as simple as a thumbs up or a thumbs down, so
mm,
that over time we can kind of train the system and see what it's talking about. Do you have anything like that?
totally. So a couple ways we kind of RLHF things, we do reinforcement learning through human feedback, is actually on the front end for the leads, you can let us know whether something was helpful or not. So if I go not helpful, we're actually collecting feedback from leads themselves, and this is surfaced to you as a dealer as well as our team. So it helps us improve the agent. Um, and of course, if I like a message, that's coming in the other way.
How
Now,
how
on
often
the
are you seeing consumers actually utilizing that?
Yeah, we get quite a lot of it. I mean, it's the good news is we have a very strong skew towards positive. I want to say I don't have the exact number for you, quite
Okay.
frankly. Yeah,
Yeah, appreciate the honesty.
for sure. So to your point on like just visibility, I think it's worth coming into the back end here. So this is actually the conversation we were just having. So you can see here the full conversation. You can optionally pause the agent if you want to hop in and continue the conversation yourself. The If something gets escalated, i.e., the agent doesn't have confidence in an answer or someone's explicitly looking for, a human, we escalate it so that the co-assigned rep gets notified. Here's an escalation where I was booking a service appointment, and yeah, for some reason here I got flagged. So it provides a summary of exactly what's happening. So a rep can quickly read this, or a GM, whoever. You can hop in, leave a reply, and once you've marked it as resolved, the agent will default continue to go. And you can then also pull up lead details of that person in conversation, review all their conversations, etc. In terms of like improving the agent, that's where the settings on the back end help a lot. So right now, I'd say like no input on a specific message other than like just ping our team and like we're gonna like uh, help in that information have that information improve the agent. But this is where you can start to add smart replies. So when you notice a common question, you can configure a piece of context the agent's going to consider going forward for, how to respond to like frequently asked questions. This is where you set up the personality and then context. So context is where if you wanted to give it specific knowledge, we can go into this part of the agent here, and you can upload a particular folder or document that you would want it to ingest, and it will know about that. And it's
So
also, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I've built a custom GPT that I've shared with about 20 dealers at this point in time that helps them to build their warranty claims for the Powersports OEs.
Mm,
And I've been able to upload the OE policy manuals for warranty because they're different. And so now the responses that it gives back are a lot more tailored to that individual
totally.
brand.
Exactly. And that's actually a great use case of the Knowledge Hub. So if you wanted to upload a literal model catalog, each time those come out for the brands you carry, those can go in here. We're actually working on making those default available, so you don't even have to upload them. Like you can just choose for them to be included. But we're also then scraping your website. So we've just learned that your website has a ton of very helpful information about your dealership. And the assumption is you're going to want to keep that up to date, right? Because it's public facing. And so the agent also regularly is going to scrape your website, get that information, and have it as part of its context.
Chris asked a question. He said, what data and analytics will be visible?
Uh, uh, this is in
He
terms
didn't,
of,
he didn't give me context there.
okay,
So
I can, I'll make the assumption this is about, yeah, like what percentage of, um, of conversations are converting into leads and how many are booking appointments. So here's an example of like the high level data that we show you within the sales agent. But then we do then have a dedicated reports and analytics page here that actually give you the full rundown, not set up in my demo environment here, unfortunately, but full rundown of like funnels and exactly like how many leads we're converting, how many appointments are getting booked. So very rich information.
cool. Like everything else, probably almost too much for most dealers.
Yeah, no, we've worked quite hard on just like simplifying it down, something you can look at it for 30 seconds and get what you need.
Nice.
Great. So I think that's, there's a lot of time spent there. I want to move quickly. Just to say something most people here will be wondering, we are priced meaningfully below the benchmarks of what others are charging in the industry. And there's a couple reasons why. The big one is that we are making a bet on our core product, which is the transaction engine, that you will want to use the transaction engine in time as more and more sales move in that direction. And because we make money there and we're very differentiated there, we are in a position where we can price the sales agent as something where it's meaningfully subsidized. It's a couple $100 a month per dealership, and that's meaningfully below the several thousands of dollars that others are going to try and charge you. And it's best in class. Don't get me wrong, but we are doing that because we just want to start a relationship with you, and we're making a bet that you're going to want to use more of the tools we have to offer over time. And here's the math for context. So at the rate we charge it, you really only need to be doing two more sales per quarter, thanks to the sales agent, in order for it to pay for itself. So that's kind of how we think about it, and hopefully compelling to folks on the call. Yeah, bit of a quick product roadmap here on things that are coming. We've got relentless follow-up just went live. That's where we are going to follow up as much as you want over the course of months or even years, because there's some interesting stats about the average buyer being in market for on average 120 days, as opposed to the 3 weeks we tend to think they are. And so this is kind of like just a very consistent follow-up. We are starting to already with a couple clients outbound stale leads that are already in their CRM. We're adding additional CRM integrations. We're adding email and voice to this. Lots of exciting stuff coming up. But before we wrap, I just want to give everyone the overview of the transaction engine. I've ordered things in this presentation very intentionally where the transaction engine, I'll be honest, is a bigger lift to get live with a dealer. It probably takes us on average, 5 days per dealer if we've got all our if the dealer and we have all our ducks in a row. And we like to be quite selective about, who are we going live with the transaction engine? Do they have the digital marketing chops to be able to, make it very successful, etc. But we really only like to do that once we've started working with you on the AI sales agent front. So that's kind of why I've ordered in this way. So AI sales agent as a quick and easy way to start working with Echo, transaction engine as the thing you graduate into in time. So what is the transaction engine? It is every step after yes handled. We automate financing, step clearance, building of funding packets, handling of funding, titling and registration, insurance verification, signature collection, fraud detection with a state-of-the-art system. We calculate, collect, and remit tax, and we do this across all 50 states. So the high-level buyer journey here is either from Echo-powered VDPs or your existing ones with CTAs injected by a script of ours. A buyer is able to say, get started or buy now, however you want to configure it. And they make their way into Echo's checkout. And so this is a very similar checkout to a Shopify or a Stripe or even a Carvana. Quick and simple. You choose your payment option, you choose your fulfillment option, you fill out your credit application. We'll send that out to the lenders you already work with today. Once we get offers back, buyers can choose them. We will calculate the advance on the deal. We integrate with every F&I aftermarket provider there is under the sun, whether you're in a reinsurance position or not. We will then take the pricing you've already configured with them and the products. We'll bundle them into up to 3 different bundles that all optimize for not increasing the down payment, but making the most of the advance on the deal. We are working with currently a 40% attach rate, which is pretty incredible. We've optimized that a lot and really exciting stuff. And then we move into document signing. We pre-fill all their forms. We collect the signatures. We process with the DMV on your behalf. And all of this is done human in the loop. So your team, whether it's titling clerks, finance managers, even the GM can hop into our admin portal. And for every deal, you get visibility into, okay, what are the action items that we need to do to close out this order? So you might need to countersign documents. You might need to assign an odometer reading if it wasn't in your DMS. And I can actually hop in there real quick and show us all what this actually looks like. So here's an example. If I were to go to all the actions required, if we go to, say, one with 2 or 3 tasks, great. So here I'm being told to, as the dealer, generate the temporary tag. Then I need to mark delivery fulfillment in progress. So provide us with delivery information. We're to and fromming with the buyer on your behalf. And all the details of the deal that you'd ever want are fully captured here. Risk reviews are done in the background to stop fraud. We collect over 1,000 signals from the buyer, feed it to the same machine learning model that CarMax uses, and produce a risk score out of 100. Above a certain threshold, we do a manual verification. Haven't had any fraudulent transactions since implementing that system. You got full access to the credit app. You can see all the taxes and fees that we've calculated and have charged and all the payouts. And then all your documents are safe and sound. And you've got a full timeline, typically of all the events that have ever happened in the deal. So when the buyer landed on your site, when they submitted a financing app, who provided offers, et cetera, et cetera. So a very quick overview. I know there's a lot of information there, but I think the broader takeaway is if you want to learn more, I've got a slide at the end here with our details, and you can always go onto our website at echo.com to book a time with us. Mark, maybe the last thing I'll mention to the group here is just why are online sales important? Because we do meet with dealers who, are believe that this is an in-person business and that's not going to change over time. So just some really interesting stats on our actual data across tens of thousands of orders now is 70% of the deals that you're going to do through Echo's online channel are incremental. And that's from post-purchase surveys we ask buyers where they indicate 70% of the time that they definitely or probably would not have bought without the online option. And that's a really important stat because the buyers that will buy units online look very different from the buyers that come into your store. And that's kind of why dealers have this cognitive dissonance between, our online sales going to work versus like, no way with my existing buyers. Like these are different folks. They probably either live a long way from your dealership. You might have the used unit that they've been scouring for online and they want to buy right then and there. Or they're just the type that don't want to come into the dealership and spend several hours there. They're often younger. So 88% of buyers through Echo are younger than the average buyer age in Powersports. And they oftentimes are a little worried or concerned that they're going to come into the store, do a financing application sitting next to the F&I manager, get rejected, and feel somewhat ashamed of that. And so they'd way rather go through the online purchase. 40% of all Echo buyers are first-time buyers of that particular vehicle type. So yeah, just trying to build the picture here of like who's buying online. And it's a generation that I would argue most dealers aren't capturing today. Great. So you can go onto our website, spend some time getting familiar with the folks that are using our transaction engine today. But lots of really exciting updates already live and or on the way. We've integrated with Progressive to make liability insurance, quoting and binding happen through the flow on newer units. We've got shipper APIs getting integrated directly so that you don't have to build out, the nationwide shipping capabilities. You can work with one of our partners, and lots of other things on the way. Cool. So I'll probably stop there, Mark, in case there's any questions, but that's kind of everything I had today.
Yeah, I got a list of questions for you, and at least based on experience, I know that we could spend, the next 15 minutes just talking about the answer to one. So maybe if you can try to condense your responses down to the 30
Sure.
second window. But I did have a question in Q&A from Mike, and I think you addressed this early on, but what CRMs do you integrate with and at the read write level?
Yeah. So today, really with ADF, we can get any leads into a system that supports that format, which is obviously most of them. But in terms of reading and writing, where we've gone deeper, is Lightspeed CRM and as well as Salesforce. And then we are in the works with DP360, trying to make that capability possible as well. But to be clear, system very usable in and of itself when we're just putting leads into that system. Really, the bidirectionality is mostly helpful if you want us to be outbounding stale leads that are already in your CRM. But most CRMs support the kind of injection of leads into that system.
Cool. Thank you. A lot of profitability for what dealers do in the power sports industry now lies in outside of the unit. I mean, a lot of dealers are kind of on the OEM hamster wheel for bonuses and, essentially are selling vehicles at close to break even and
Yeah.
then relying on F&I parts and accessories service to, make some margin on those vehicles to make the business viable. I think that there's a concern with a lot of dealers that if we try to really automate the sales process, that maybe we really limit the dealer's ability to sell those other items. How do you address that when dealers ask that
Mm.
question?
Yeah, it's a very valid concern and something we do hear from a meaningful number of dealers. So couple things we do. One is we've got F&I aftermarket product menus integrated directly into the product, as mentioned. And we've done a lot of work there to increase attach rates to 40% today. And that's only after a few experiments we've run. And you can imagine how much more room there is to grow there. So any F&I products that you're selling in store today, you can make available through the online channel, and they do get sold. And in fact, there's a lot of research out there that suggests when it's a less of a pressured, conversation and or decision for the buyer, i.e., self-serve online, that you can and often do see better results. So that's one side of it. The other side is just PG&A. We do support PG&A upsells. So we didn't go through it today, but we've got what we call our accessorize page, where once you say get started, you move into a page of our checkout where, based on eligibility rules you've defined in our admin portal and the inventory you have for PG&A, we're going to show all the PG&A that can be bolted onto and or included with those units, whether that's a helmet or windshields, etc. Those will all show up and they can get tacked on. So we've done a lot of work there. The other thing is just last thing I'll say is lifetime value. So let's say you are hypothetically taking a haircut on the front end, which for the reasons I've discussed is not necessarily the case, but let's say you are because of online sales. The reality is if you can get that customer and then you give them a great experience and they enjoy it, they're going to be back, next riding season, 12, 24 months for their kids, whoever it is, to buy from you again, most likely, because you've given them that great experience. So we help you increase what I'd call the lifetime value of the customer, the LTV, because yeah, they're going to be your customer for many years to come based on the experience you've given to them. And that should be taken into consideration and not just, I think, like on a per deal basis, am I making more or less than what I do today?
Yeah, I mean, I often talk about online about playing the long game, which I think is what you're really talking about. So I also, a lot of times I talk about the difference between a vendor and a partner. And earlier on in this conversation, you referred to yourself as a vendor. What do you think it takes
Oops.
for you to take your company to be a partner with the dealers and not just a vendor like so many of us are used to working with?
Yeah, great question. And I clearly failed that test. So no, we do think of ourselves as a partner. What does that take? I think it's on the like post purchase of new software into the like actual activation and like getting you productive and successful with the tool, having an entire team, in our case, what we call a dealer success team, dedicated to making sure our customers are successful. So I think we already do this today. Every client we partner with gets a fully dedicated account manager, dealer success manager. These are very smart folks, worked at, BCG or venture capital firms who have joined Echo, and they're flying out to you if, you're a big enough, complex enough business, and or they're meeting with you on a fairly regular cadence, to just make sure you know exactly how to use the tool, the rest of your team does, and we're getting that feedback from you in case you're not, to help improve it. So we do a lot of that, and we're scaling up that team at the same rate we're scaling up our engineering team. So I think that's a big part of it. The other part is, I think, just like actually not just like talking the talk, but walking it when it comes to being on top of like industry best practices and priorities. So that's why, we're part of the MIC, we're part of NPDA, LSVDA. We go to conferences regularly. We pay for people on our team to go to conferences to make sure we are in the same rooms as dealers, to understand like where are the pain points today? What should our tech be doing to help alleviate those things? So those are a couple of the ways that I would say we do this. But yeah, certainly our goal.
You brought up Carvana a few times in the presentation, and then I'm going to try to condense like three questions into one here. But a couple of months ago, we had an extra used car, and my wife did, and I got tired of looking at it in the driveway, and mice a couple of times had tried to move into it. So it was like time to get rid of it. And I will tell you that that process of selling a used vehicle through Carvana, probably one of the easiest things that I've ever done in my life. I
Right.
mean, it really kind of made me aware about how important that process is. But the other thing that really bugs me, and I see a lot of Carvana commercials, and they always talk about their tool that, customers are raving about, my personal price point. I don't even know what they call it. But, essentially all that tool is doing is allowing the consumer to figure out what their monthly payment's going to be by adjusting their down payment. They're not even negotiating like we are on the
Right.
showroom floor with any of the dealer's money. It's their own money. If you want a lower down payment, then or if you want a lower monthly payment, then you got to have a bigger down payment. It's to me, I'm just looking at these people, I'm going, how stupid are you? But when we have attempted to try something like on our website, I was amazed at the number of people who utilized that tool and submitted a lead on it. So, uh,
Right.
just again to kind of tie a couple of things together, have you thought about how to use your tool to maybe help dealers to do a better job of buying used inventory? Because I don't think
Mm,
anybody is really focusing on that at this point in time. And, my second question is, are you seeing dealers that are driving additional leads kind of using your version of digital retailing?
mm. Yeah, great questions. So on the first one, we I think there are already some pretty good tools out there that are somewhat new, helping dealers understand like what used inventory should you have given your market and at what price should you sell it at. So I don't think that's necessarily a game we're trying to play right now. What we want to help you do is meet you when you've made the decision that like let's say used is a priority, but we also for what it's worth support new. But let's say it's used. We want to meet you when you've got that inventory, you're looking to move units, and your pricing strategy is such that you are competitive in the market, and we want to help you move those units more quickly. Um, and so segueing into the answer to the second one of like, is this helping dealers move units, get more leads? Yes. Like we are integrating with dealers that hold a lot of inventory. And once they can put this up, align their marketing around, getting everyone aware that like you can buy this vehicle like you can buy a car on Carvana, you turn them into a nationwide retailer. So the pool of potential buyers for any given unit at your dealership is now the entire United States as opposed to the 50-mile or 100-mile radius around your dealership. And that truly wasn't the case before because even if someone's, uh, 5 states over and submits a lead on your deal, like it's going to be a clunky process to get that unit out to them. And quite frankly, I meet a lot of dealers who are far too scared to even do it because they've been burnt by fraud in the past trying to do an out-of-state deal, let alone the titling and registration, which they probably don't have comfortability in doing today. So we handle all of that minutia in between. We open up your market. And yeah, once you turn this thing on and you've let the world know that you've got that capability, we, you sell deals, you sell more units.
Cool. Got a couple more questions for you, and then we will wrap up for everybody. Anonymous asked, what connections, integrations are you going to be allowing with the OEMs?
Yeah, so where we are at right now, in supporting like OEM integrations, we already do have an engine that basically goes out and makes sure we are abreast of all relevant OEM promos, such that if you are, using Echo's VDPs, let's say, as well as our transaction engine, we for all your new inventory are showing the correct promos that might apply at both the VDP and at the checkout level. The trickier one to get right, which we're working hard on, is the supporting the OEM captives in the case that they have their own captive lender. Of course, this is important for dealers on new units to be able to submit credit applications there, given a lot of the promos and bonuses that come from it. So hard at work on that. And that's why for now, we're generally saying used inventory is a great fit on the transaction engine, in particular, because you can use the lenders we have direct integrations with full spectrum coverage you can sell. In the new case, you need to be comfortable with the online channel potentially getting deals financed not through the captive. But we do support the ability for you to turn online sales capabilities off with new inventory as well, kind of dynamically. So all of that's in the works. But yeah.
So last question I got for you. As a board member of the NPDA, I'd say right now probably every third email that I get ask about, our thoughts on the FTC, what what we're doing about that particular situation. I can say as the NPDA, we've kind of been very clear with the industry what we want. We've surveyed, sorry, lose my voice again. We've surveyed dealers, we've surveyed consumers. We know that the majority of consumers want price transparency, but our continued roadblock is that our vendors in the industry don't at this point in time. And so we're kind of stuck. And, at Woods, our dealership in Texas, we actually decided as of the first of this month that we're just going to adopt that model. And so we've done away with freight and setup. We've got one price on our website. It's definitely putting us at a pricing disadvantage in the marketplace. Hopefully, other dealers will follow through with that. And at least initially, feedback from consumers has been good. They kind of like that clarity and pricing. What are your thoughts on this whole FTC issue? I mean, I know a lot of what you're doing is really trying to streamline that process for consumers and make things easier and more transparent for them. What are your thoughts on this FTC issue, and where do you think the industry is in a year or two down the road?
Yeah, no, it's a nuanced topic. I think, there's the kind of objective reality, which I'll cover first, like its implications on Echo. It's a great tailwind for us, incidentally, right? Like the whole premise of online sales requires and necessitates that you are transparent with your price, because you can't do an online sale that's self-serve without telling the buyer exactly what they're going to pay and have them agree to that and go through the process. In that way, historically, we've had some dealers tell us like, I'm not going to use this because I don't want to put my real price up there. I need to like draw leads in, get them in the store, and then we can kind of figure that out later. So in that way, it's a big forcing function. Like that objection goes away. Now the premise of online sales is just like that much stronger. In terms of what do I think about it? Yeah, I think, ultimately the whole world, every industry, I think is trending towards a world where, this idea of playing cat and mouse in store, and figuring out like where the leverage lies in a conversation and like how you can price something is going to be a thing of the past in time. Now, the nuance and the complication in the world of powersports, to your point on vendors and OEMs, is that structurally things need to change in order for that model to work for dealers and for them to remain profitable and thrive as businesses. And I think there's a big onus and burden on the OEMs to make sure that there is going to be some room on the front end, right? To make sure that dealers can remain profitable. There needs to be more transparency and practicality around, who takes on the burden of freight, things like that. So lots of nuance. That I would say the average consumer looked at like the FTC actions and they go like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Like, why is it taking so long? It's like, well, it's far more complicated than that, right? Given how the industry operates and where margins reside and the whole value chain of OEM down to distributor down to dealer. So yeah, that's kind of like just scratching the surface, but my quick thoughts.
I'm going to take your answer as a non-answer at this point in time. So, like, yeah, I don't know. You're kind of in that position where you've got to walk down the center of the aisle too. So I get it.
I was gonna say, yeah, we do need to play the role of Switzerland, right, as a transactional layer. I think, let me try and give you something more front and center. Yeah, I think I echo a lot of what the NPD has said, which is, in principle, this makes sense for consumers. People want this. But what is required for it to work out and not adversely impact the dealer body is for the entire dealer body more or less at the same time to adopt the practice, or else you've got this like arbitrage opportunity for the folks that like risk it and take a little longer for them
Yeah.
to do all the deals. And so I think there needs to be some unanimous like effort to have that adoption take place. And then secondarily, I think OEMs need to step up and realize the margin compression reality that comes with this result and take on the responsibility of making sure that, from a kind of like margin restructuring standpoint, dealers can make more on the front end, and perhaps not take on the burden of certain kind of like hidden ancillary freight charges that they might end up needing to cover on the dealer end.
Well, in the end, and I've heard every retort from the OEs at this point in time about why they don't want to do this, why they can't do this. And I think it's crazy to me that you can look up at Canada and the exact same OEs who are telling me we can't do this here in the US are already doing it in Canada because that's what the law says up there, that you've got to be clear and transparent about your pricing. And I think there's some concerns about profitability, but in the end, you've been to business school. You kind of know that any industry at some point in time is going to settle on some acceptable margin that supports the businesses, supports the consumers in the industry. And I think that the power sports industry has kind of figured out what that margin needs to be. And I don't think that including freight and setup in the MSRP just across the board with every dealer's is going to be that quick windfall for dealers. There might be a short-term window where there's a little bit of extra profit opportunity, but in the end, I think things are going to pretty quickly settle back to where they were prior to that. Because
Hmm.
in any business, if there's opportunity to make excess margin, that's going to draw more people into the industry and it's going to make it more competitive by default. So I don't agree with any of the points that any of the vendors have made at this point that they
Hmm.
just can't do it for whatever reason. I think it's the best for the industry. I think that the whole freight and setup game right now is a very bad look for the industry and for the dealers who have to play that game. And
Yeah.
even when I went through a quick session with the MIC a few weeks ago, and they were trying to understand it. And so we went to one of the vendors' websites, and I actually went through the entire build a unit process on their website. And when we get to the end, I had this motorcycle at this price that's clearly advertised on the OE site. Doesn't say anything about freight. And so,
Hmm.
now you've got the manufacturers that are actually
Yeah.
advertising at one price. That's not a price that you can buy that bike
Yeah.
for out in the field. So I don't really get it. I don't like it, but we're kind of stuck with it. I had 100 other questions, but we don't have another hour, so I think I'm going to call an end to this. So, I want to say
Sure.
thanks to everyone who attended today's webinar, done in conjunction with another of our partners at the NPDA. I'm excited to announce that I've only got one planned webinar left at this point in time. So, I had no idea that so many people were going to raise their hands and want to do this when we started, but it's been fun, and I've learned a lot about all of the partners that we have at the NPDA. As a reminder, the NPDA is not just here to support our dealer members, but also the entire industry. If you're a current member, thanks. If you're a partner, we really appreciate it. And if you're not a member, you can see on the screen, it's a pretty low cost of entry. We really appreciate it if you could sign up and support all the great things that we're doing. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to attend today's webinar. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Rowan, anything
Brilliant.
to wrap up with?
No, just I think what you had said about the FTC stuff at the end there was very eloquent. And I certainly agree with it. So thanks for having me, Mark, and for everyone who came. This was a lot of fun.
Everyone have a great week and good start to the month. Take care. Bye-bye.